everyone, and welcome to another installment of TEDXcellence, the show in which we attempt to learn things that nobody should really know. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday. Wicked Wednesday. Sure, why not? Oh, what a day. Well, I'll get into why I've picked today's subject shortly. But first, let me say hello to all of you lovely people who decided to come out today to learn something along with me. And that would be Kay Schull, hello. Wade Willison, hello. Black Belt for Christ, hello. Jordan Herbert, hello. St. Michael, hello. Zach Osborne, hello. No Room for Squares, hello. Absolutely Degenerate, hello. Zalbla, hello. The Luke Skywalker 2, hello. Why Do I Exist? Hello. Lack of Empathy, hello. Getting very existential here all of a sudden. Gear PG, hello. That One Servant of Satania, hello. Brutus, hello. Gamer Valine, hello. Gun Fox 61, hello. Asian Hippie, hello. Point Curation, hello. Slaffer 360, hello. Dark Alal, hello. Zeke, sorry. And then chat jump, because of course it does. Right then, right when I was about to say Zeke Weiss, hello. Or Vice. Edelweiss, Edelweiss. Lexi Mads, hello. Brittany Holland, hello. L. Wolf, hello. Chicago Mike, hello. And Chicago Mike, thank you so much. Scribe, I'm working right now. Good luck with bingo. I will catch the reply later. Thank you so much, Mike. Good luck with work for yourself. Yeah, I just got done with mine mostly for the day. I'll have to check in later. But, you know, that's the way the cookie doth crumble. Keeverdam, hello. Simon Willikins, hello. Let's see. The gayest person on YouTube, hello. Chaos X, hello. Tarkata, hello. Zero the Hero, 909, hello. The Other Choice, hello. Green Death, hello. Mike Savage. Blarg. Dina B, hello. Big Assassin 80, hello. Crimson Tiger, hello. Lancelot 652, hello. Megan Ring, hello. Texas Red, hello. And I do like my redheads. Sabian 187, hello. Gulf City Peterbilt Confederacy 379, hello. Hate Camel, hello. Fernanda, hello. Quinn the Cultist, hello. George Mason, hello. Brad Young, hello. The Redneck Ram, hello. Sardi, hello. And oh my gosh, guys, I'm overwhelmed with all you guys showing up. Havoc Vladimirovich Stalinov, hello. Hearst Gravegear, hello. Brian Has Opinions of Formerly the Book and Baller, hello. Stargazer Nuts, hello. Mickey TC, hello. Ham and Beans, hello. Check Your Logic, hello. Frosted Glass, hello. The Redneck Ram, thank you so much. Love your TEDx vids. They are great to listen to while I'm out on my route. Don't worry, typed while off-road. Okay. Well, thank you for typing while off-road as you're mudding through the hills and the valleys. Going off-road. Faithless, hello. Lurking Gopher, hello. All right, guys. Boy, as popular and as populous as these become, I might have to start waylaying my hellos as much as I have. We'll see. We'll see. But what are we doing today? Well, actually, this might be the first time I've ever done this. I picked this out a while back. I have a library of TEDx's I'm sort of saving for a rainy day on different subjects. But it was interesting. In the last TEDx, the Agents of Change video, the Mount Everest of bingos for this series so far, something was mentioned very briefly by our speakers that I felt like needed more explanation. At one point, one of the speakers said, our group attempted to achieve intersectionality, or something to that effect. Now, the concept of intersectionality is one that I'm relatively familiar with, but the exception being that I've only heard it from secondary sources. This concept of intersectionality was created by the speaker of today's presentation back in 1989. Kimberly Crenshaw created the concept of intersectionality. And rather than spoil what I think it means, because maybe my understanding is flawed, it's entirely possible, I thought it might be useful for us to go to the source, which is kind of the theme I'm going with lately, and find out exactly what is intersectionality, how does that relate to not only what our previous speakers were talking about, but also in general, because this is a term and a concept that is thrown about quite a bit. In fact, there's even a whole subsection of feminism called intersectional feminism. What does that have to do with this? Well, hopefully we'll find out, or at least understand better the concept. Thank you, the gayest person on YouTube. One, please. You shall have one. And done. All right. So also, I have to mention, this is a truncated version of the original presentation. Truncated in that I had to slice off the last few minutes because she wraps up her presentation with a music number. She has someone come out on stage and begin singing to some slides that are going on. And since I don't, A, the song has absolutely nothing to do with the presentation, and B, I'm fairly certain the song's probably copyrighted, I just cut that part off. So if you'd like to see the entire presentation unedited, a link is in the description. I should also add, this is actually a TED Talk, an actual official TED Talk, not a TEDx talk. So it should be very fancy. Bingo cards, links in the description, have yours ready. This talk is a couple of years old now, so I'll be curious to see if the bingo card is as relevant for a older presentation as it has been for so many recently. All that being said, per usual, I will start off with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it. This one's a relatively long presentation running at just over 16 minutes, so I'm going to get right into it. And here we go.
I'd like to try something new.
She'd like to try something new. All right, you guys hear all that? Let me know while I... Oh, Pepperjack. You my only friend. Mike R says, sounds good. Slabber360 says, sounds good. John Smith gives me a bunch of thumbs up. All right, here we go.
Those of you who are able, please stand up.
Those of you who are able, please stand up. Thank you, Crimson Tiger. I saw this for my gender studies class. Pretty interesting. Oh, okay. Like I say, this might actually be an educational one, even if it does dole out some baffling ideas. Who knows?
Okay, so I'm going to name some names. When you hear a name that you don't recognize, you can't tell me anything about them, I'd like you to take a seat and stay seated.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, as she names off names, we'll see if I can name anybody or know anything about them. Well, here's the other thing. What if she says one name and people don't know it, but then the next name she says and they do know it? Do they stand back up again?
The last person standing, we're going to see what they know. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Eric Garner.
Eric, oh, I see where this is going. Eric Garner was the man who was selling loose cigarettes on a corner in New York, I think the Bronx or something. And when he refused to comply with the police, he was given a chokehold and suffocated and died. That's my understanding of Eric Garner.
Mike Brown.
Ferguson, Missouri. Mike Brown assaulted a police officer, tried to take his gun from the police officer. Police officer shot him after the guy charged him.
Tamir Rice.
Tamir Rice was a 12-year-old in, oh, God. My reflex wants to say Ohio. I don't think it was Ohio. But anyway, 12-year-old in a park, and he had a fake gun on him, and police pulled up, and he was holding the gun out or something, and they shot him. It was one of those things where it's like, did it happen too fast? Was there not enough warning time? Very messy case, very tragic.
Freddie Gray.
Freddie Gray was someone who was in the back of a police van after being arrested for something. And then this is Baltimore. And in the course of the van trip or whatever, it's still a bit muddled to me. I don't know all the details, but somewhere in the middle of there, he was injured in the ride in the van, and his spine was snapped or broken. His neck was broken, and he died as a result of his injuries. And I think it was 6 different police officers were involved in that, and half of them, part of the controversy was this was some kind of racist attack, and yet half of the cops involved were not white. And there was riots that resulted from that, as well as in the Mike Brown case.
So those of you who are still standing, I'd like you to turn around and take a look. I'd say half to most of the people are still standing.
Okay, and if I remember correctly, this was posted, I think, in 2018. So I'm actually kind of surprised that so many people sat down because so many of those names got so much coverage. But okay.
So let's continue.
All right.
Michelle Cusseau.
Oh, well, I'd be sitting down at that point. That doesn't ring a bell.
Tanisha Anderson.
Yep, nope, that doesn't ring a bell either.
Ara Russer.
Nope.
Megan Hockaday.
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I couldn't tell you.
So if we look around again.
Well, the lady in red, hold on, back up just a second here. The lady in red down there, she really knows her stuff. I see her particularly. I guess there's this lady back here, and I guess a couple people here. Okay.
So if we look around again, there are about 4 people still standing. And actually, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I just say that to encourage transparency, so you could be seated.
Encourage transparency of what?
So those of you who recognize the first group of names know that these were African Americans who've been killed by the police over the last 2.5 years.
That's putting it a bit simply, I suppose.
What you may not know is that the other list is also African Americans who have been killed within the last 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Only one thing distinguishes the names that you know from the names that you don't know.
Okay.
Gender.
Oh. So were they all killed by police too? The Hockaday name I remember for some reason. I remember that one.
So let me first let you know that there's nothing at all distinct about this audience that explains the pattern of recognition that we've just seen. I've done this exercise dozens of times around the country. I've done it to women's rights organizations. I've done it with civil rights groups. I've done it with professors. I've done it with students. I've done it with psychologists. I've done it with sociologists. I've done it even with progressive members of Congress.
And legitimate question, is that more an artifact of people's willful ignorance of certain people in certain circumstances, or is that a consequence of a lack of press coverage? I mean, if someone living in a state where this thing did not take place never hears the story because it doesn't make the national news, are they to blame for their lack of information? Or I'm curious to know what her conclusion is about people that sat down in these instances.
And everywhere, the awareness of the level of police violence that Black women experience is exceedingly low.
And your explanation for this is?
Now, it is surprising, isn't it, that this would be the case? I mean, there are 2 issues involved here. There's police violence against African Americans, and there's violence against women. 2 issues that have been talked about a lot lately.
Well, in your stories, there was just an equal amount of violence against men. You named off an equal number of names on both sides of the gender equation, and all of them had been killed, I'm presuming, by police in some fashion. So violence against men is equal in your example. What does that got? I need some more information. I'm getting ready to circle. Well, we got to wait. This is a long one.
But when we think about who is implicated by these problems, when we think about who's victimized by these problems, the names of these Black women never come to mind.
Well, I mean, the names of several actors don't come to mind unless I'm thinking of a movie. The Hockaday name I remembered for some reason. So, I mean, I'm not trying to, preach myself as some kind of a saint or something, but what is this? What does this say about a person if they cannot recognize all of these names? What is the conclusion that you're coming to?
Now, communications experts tell us that when facts do not fit with the available frames, people have a difficult time incorporating new facts into their way of thinking about a problem.
Okay.
These women's names have slipped through our consciousness because there are no frames for us to see them, no frames for us to remember them, no frames for us to hold them.
What? Or their cases weren't as widely broadcast. I mean, someone sitting down in the audience, again, is that some sort of willful ignorance on their part, or are they just unaware of the story? Are we required as people to know every detail about every story that you think is important? And if we don't, then we're, what, morally or consciously deficient? Not sure I get that one. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, Kyle. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go to the bingo card real quick. Free space I'm circling. We've had, she had people go off of a list of people who were shot by police or died in police action. I don't know all the details of each case necessarily. So a list and free space. Let's see. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzzphrase. Well, she's talking about a concept that she herself coined back in the 1980s. So I can't really circle it as a new buzzword, buzzphrase. It's her buzzword, buzzphrase. But anyway, contradicts own point or argument. Haven't gotten there yet. White supremacy, no. Takes credit for something done, experienced by others, not yet. Marginalized, marginalization, not yet, but we might get there. Wage gap, possibly. Childhood or family anecdote, not yet. Leaves out vital context. I'm thinking we're going to get there. Self-vilification or wretchedness, I'd be surprised. Equity, maybe. Weightless example, perhaps. Toxic, not yet. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I'm going to sit on that one. That'll probably be circled. Microaggressions, unconscious bias, not yet. Anecdote that probably never happened, not yet. Privilege, no. Benevolent condescension, I figure we'll get there. Systemic institutional, I'd be surprised if we don't. Plays victim, probably. Feminism, I'd be surprised if we don't. Patriarchy, maybe. We're going there already a little bit. Mind reading assumes motives. I have no doubt we'll get to that one. And then word salad, not yet. So that's where we're at. A list and free space and a whole bunch of probably maybes. Moving on.
As a consequence, reporters don't lead with them. Policymakers don't think about them. And politicians aren't encouraged or demanded that they speak to them.
Okay, so the press, policymakers, and politicians are all sexist. At the very least, perhaps also racist, but at least sexist. Got it.
Now, you might ask, well, why does a frame matter? I mean, after all, an issue that affects Black people and an issue that affects women, wouldn't that necessarily include Black people who are women and women who are Black people?
Who's building the frame? I know it's kind of a weird question to ask because we're talking in very odd abstracts here, but I guess it depends on who's building the frame first and foremost. I'm on the cusp of circling word salad because that last part there didn't make a whole lot of sense, but okay.
Well, the simple answer is that this is a trickle-down approach to social justice, and many times it just doesn't work.
What is a trickle-down approach to social justice? What is? Did I miss something? Did she explain something? Okay.
Without frames that allow us to see how social problems impact all the members of a targeted group, many will fall through the cracks of our movements, left to suffer in virtual isolation.
A targeted group. Targeted by whom? And we're not talking about groups. Once again, I did this the last time. It's demographics. There is a difference between a group and a demographic. Okay.
But it doesn't have to be this way.
What way? Trickle down social justice. You didn't describe what you're talking about. Framing this, you gave examples of people who have died in relation to police action. I can't name off the circumstances of each one, but okay. And some stories are more knowledge or known by people than others, mostly because of press coverage, mostly because of accompanying riots or other things and protests. And that means, and all the people involved, the press, policymakers, politicians, they're all inherently sexist and or racist. And that's why we haven't heard the women's names as often as we've heard the other names. And okay.
Many years ago, I began to use the term intersectionality to deal with the fact that many of our social justice problems like racism and sexism are often overlapping, creating multiple levels of social injustice.
Multiple levels of social injustice. Okay. And now we're getting to my sort of basic understanding of the concept of intersectionality. Okay, so multiple levels of injustice. Do go on.
Now, the experience that gave rise to intersectionality was my chance encounter with a woman named Emma Degraffenreid. Emma Degraffenreid was an African-American woman, a working wife, and a mother.
Okay. Woman, African-American, working, wife, and mother. Got it.
I actually read about Emma's story from the pages of a legal opinion written by a judge who had dismissed Emma's claim of race and gender discrimination against a local car manufacturing plant.
Okay. So she brought a case against the car company. It was dismissed. Okay.
Emma, like so many African-American women, sought better employment for her family and for others. She wanted to create a better life for her children and for her family.
Okay. And the details of this case were what?
But she applied for a job and she was not hired. And she believed that she was not hired because she was a Black woman.
Why did she believe that?
Now, the judge in question dismissed Emma's suit.
Thank you, Gear PG, for the Kung Fu or karate, perhaps a karate Dogcat Fox. Yes, Dogcat Fox is my protector here on the moon. Dogcat Fox is familiar with many forms of martial arts. Relatively ineffective against large creatures, but it's cute to watch, you know, because Dogcat Fox. Okay, judge dismissed the case. And I suppose the judge was also racist and sexist, or...
And the argument for dismissing the suit was that the employer did hire African Americans, and the employer hired women.
Okay. Well, that is pretty good evidence to the contrary of the claim that the employer is specifically discriminating on race and gender. So
the real problem, though, that the judge was not willing to acknowledge was what Emma was actually trying to say.
Okay, what was Emma actually trying to say? If her case was about she was not hired because she's a Black woman, and the company hires people from several different races and both genders, what was she actually trying to say?
That the African Americans that were hired, usually for industrial jobs, maintenance jobs, were all men. And the women that were hired, usually for secretarial or front office work, were all white.
Okay. Is that true? There were no African American women anywhere on that side of the equation, and there were no white men on the other side of the equation? Is that true?
Only if the court was able to see how these policies came together would he be able to see the double discrimination that Emma Degraffenreid was facing.
That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And not in the sense that her case, therefore, should have been validated. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay. You want to make a subcategory of discrimination based on the combination of elements of a makeup of a person. But you can't really get there. And also, I have a very hard time believing that there were no white men laborers and no non-white women secretarial, or that all the people in the secretarial side were women and all the people on the labor side were men. I'd want some more evidence of that personally. Thank you, Point Curation. Just take a slice, you double discrimination. Yeah, double discrimination. Yeah, I double dog dare you. Okay, so this lady was oppressed and mistreated not because she was a woman and not because she was black, but because she was a black female. Okay.
But the court refused to allow Emma to put two causes of action together to tell her story, because he believed that by allowing her to do that, she would be able to have preferential treatment. She'd have an advantage by being able to have two swings at the bat when African American men and white women only had one swing at the bat.
Right. So the judge, was not interested in creating a subcategory of discrimination by combining two things in the law dealing with race and gender as two elements of a person when you have a company that was not discriminating on the basis of race or gender. And again, I have a very hard time believing that all of the people on the labor side were black men and all of the people on the secretarial side were white women. Very hard time believing that that is the case. So I am going to circle anecdote that probably never happened in that regard, because I have a hard time believing, statistically speaking, that that is the case. Not that it would change so much, I suppose, her argument, but anyway.
But of course, neither African American men or white women needed to combine a race and gender discrimination claim to tell the story of the discrimination they were experiencing.
What? Thank you, the Redneck Ram. Or maybe it isn't discrimination. It is instead meritocratic hiring practices. Just maybe. Yeah. Did we allow for any other possibility there? What was the company's explanation? Their explanation for why they didn't hire her? I mean, you've given us the judge's ruling on why he doesn't think that discrimination took place. What was the company's reasoning for not hiring her? That'd be my next question. And for full transparency, as was mentioned at the beginning of this, you'd be telling us at least what the company's argument is. I hope she does. I'd like a clearer picture. Otherwise, I'm going to circle leaves out vital context from this little story.
Why wasn't the real unfairness law's refusal to protect African American women simply because their experiences weren't exactly the same as white women and African American men?
What? Okay, I'm backing up a little bit. I just want to hear that one more time. Sorry, guys.
Same as.
Oh, sorry, I'm not far enough. Okay.
So to protect African American women simply because their experiences weren't exactly the same as white women and African American men.
The laws were not created to protect African American women. Okay, did she have proof that they discriminated against her because she was a woman and or she was black? No? Then she didn't have a case. She would have to prove that. She wasn't able to prove that in court. And I have a very hard time also believing that the relatively simple explanation that our speaker has given as to the judge's reasoning on the subject is the whole story. Not having the case in front of me, I can't say for certain. It all sounds a little bit too conveniently on point for her.
Rather than broadening the frame to include African American women,
Rather than broadening the frame to include African American women. Okay, now, I am not a lawyer. I am not a legal historian. But I have looked at the equal employment laws many, many, many times over the years. And you're right, they don't specify African American women. They specify that businesses are prohibited from discriminating on the basis of race, sex, and or gender, depending on how you want to define that. And several people do just choose to define it differently. Ethnicity, religion, and so on. It doesn't get that granularly specific because you want to have the broadest explanation possible to catch as many people as possible in it. If she could prove that she was not hired specifically because she was black or a woman, not black and a woman, but I mean, if you got one, you've got them both, essentially. She'd have to, if she can't prove that, oh God, okay, I'm starting to get myself an aneurysm here. Moving on.
court simply tossed their case completely out of court.
Because she didn't have a case. She could not prove that the company practiced discrimination in her case. And you're not giving us the company's explanation for their not hiring her, so we don't know what the other side of the argument is. You've given us her side and the ultimate decision on the basis of the judge's reasoning, which may or may not be entirely complete. But you haven't said anything about what the company's defense was. Why not?
Now, as a student of anti-discrimination law, as a feminist, as an anti-racist.
Feminism. All right, circling feminism on the board. And an anti-racist. Now, it's given that this is a couple of years old now, and I don't know how long that idea has been around. I wonder if, and I can't know this, but I wonder if our speaker's concept of anti-racism aligns with the definition we were given in the Ibram X. Kendi TEDx talk, where he defined anti-racism, since he wrote the book, How to Be Anti-Racist. I'd be curious to find out, if it's at all possible, if those two definitions align. Assassin the Gray says, list. I already circled the list. Here's what I have circled so far. Feminism, anecdote that probably never happened, free space, and a list. That's what I have so far. And I got to hit the button.
I was struck by this case. It felt to me like injustice squared.
It felt to you like injustice squared. Got it.
So first of all, Black women weren't allowed to work at the plant.
Black women were not allowed to work at the plant. Specifically, Black women were not allowed. You know this to be true. At no point at that plant was there ever a Black woman employed there. Okay. And this was written down somewhere in the company bylaws, thou shalt not hire Black women. Is that what I am to believe?
Second of all, the court doubled down on this exclusion by making it legally inconsequential.
Making it excuse me. Making what illegally? Making what legally inconsequential? Was there something in the company bylaws that said thou shalt not hire black women? That doesn't make any sense.
And to boot, there was no name for this problem. And we all know that where there's no name for a problem, you can't see a problem. And when you can't see a problem, you pretty much can't solve it.
Right. When there is an invisible force in the world that you think is there, that nobody else would imagine is actually there, when you're told that it's not there, you have to conjure one into existence and then say, here's the problem I came up with that you are a part of. Sounds reasonable.
Many years later, I'd come to recognize that the problem that Emma was facing was a framing problem.
Yeah, we keep coming back to the framing problem. What do you mean by framing? What are you talking about? Thank you. This is Kyle. We will hire you if you're black. We'll hire you if you're a woman, but not if you have a black cooter. I mean, well, that's the accusation here, I guess, without any other details. And again, I'd have to look up the case to see if it's actually something that can be looked up and whether or not what she's saying actually aligns. I mean, if it turns out to be true, and this won't really matter, I guess, after the course of this show, if it turns out to be true that the plant that we're talking about at that time didn't have any white men in labor and only white women on secretarial, okay, I'll take back the anecdote that probably never happened. That still doesn't mean she had a case. So, yeah.
The frame that the court was using to see gender discrimination or to see race discrimination was partial, and it was distorting.
No, it wasn't. Were they discriminating on the basis of gender? No. Were they discriminating on the basis of race? No. So unless you can find something that says that specifically we won't hire black women, you don't have a case. The law says thou shalt not discriminate on the basis of race or gender. They employed both races, or at least the two that are most important to our speaker, obviously, and both genders. And again, I have a very hard time believing that it was so cut and dry as only black men in labor and only white women in secretarial.
For me, the challenge that I faced was trying to figure out whether there was an alternative narrative, a prism that would allow us to see Emma's dilemma, a prism that would allow us to rescue her from the cracks in the law, that would allow judges to see her story.
A prism. So an alternate version of reality. An alternate version of legal definition. Okay.
So it occurred to me, maybe a simple analogy to an intersection might allow judges to better see Emma's dilemma.
An intersection would allow judges to see Emma's dilemma. So in the absence of any evidence that the company was overtly discriminating against her, either on the basis of race or gender, intersectionality would have made the company guilty of discriminating against her on the basis of race and gender. Even though you had no evidence that either of the individual elements were being violated under law, then the combination of the two would have been violated under law because she was a black woman and for no other reason. Is that what I am to understand?
So if we think about this intersection, the roads to the intersection would be the way that the workforce was structured by race and by gender.
Lexi Mads found it. Emma Degraffenreid versus General Motors. Case was dismissed based on the, quote, last hired, first fired seniority system. Last hired. So she was already employed at the plant? I thought she went there to get a job. Okay, well, I appreciate the lookup. Lexi also says, this case was brought in 1975 and judgment made in 1976. Okay. So the part about the anecdote that probably never happened, the statement that only black men were in labor and all of the secretarial side was white women, that's the part that let's just say I'm dubious about at best. I will take that one back for the time being off of the bingo card, just on the off chance that actually turns out to be true. If we're talking about the 1970s, maybe it's true. I don't know. That doesn't prove her argument, but I won't penalize the talk for it if it's not untrue. Thank you, Drew W. I can see it happening. Depending on time, women probably didn't do labor, and blacks weren't allowed up front where they could be seen. Yeah, like I said, if that's true for the 1970s, then sure. Yeah, and I'm not saying the case didn't happen. I'm just wondering if the elements that she listed off were true. All right, moving on.
And then the traffic in those roads would be the hiring policies and the other practices that ran through those roads. Now, because Emma was both black and female, she was positioned precisely where those roads overlapped.
What was the factory's defense? What was their reasoning for not giving her a job, whether we're talking about a promotion or a new job? Why aren't you at least giving us that piece of information? I can't have a whole picture of the situation. You say the judge somehow discriminated. I mean, the judge was discriminating against her because she was a black woman, not seeing black woman as its own category. Why aren't you giving us what the company said their reasoning was? That part I don't get. But okay, so Emma is doubly a victim.
Experiencing the simultaneous impact of the company's gender and race traffic.
So why were there an equal number of people killed by police on both sides of the gender equation in your opening? You still haven't quite answered that one either. Violence against women, at least in your own example, was as balanced as it was against men. So
the law was like that ambulance that shows up and is ready to treat Emma only if it can be shown that she was harmed on the race road or on the gender road, but not where those roads intersected.
You know, I don't understand the smiling. It's very, very smug, or it's very in contrast with the seriousness of what she's saying. I don't quite understand that. Okay. Let's see. Frostica says, leaves out vital context. Yeah, she hasn't mentioned anything about even what the company's explanation was, so I'm circling leaves out vital context. Thank you, Shrouded Angel, for the dog cat fox. Smiley dog cat fox. Okay, so Emma is doubly a victim. The judge was terrible. His decision was terrible. You disagree with the judge's decision. You've made the same point about 4 times now. And then what?
So what do you call being impacted by multiple forces and then abandoned to fend for yourself?
Why are you smiling? It's just so incongruous with what she's talking about.
Intersectionality seemed to do it for me.
Yeah, I guess it did. It really did. A fend for yourself. So she was married, right? She had a husband. Was he working? Was he earning any income? What caused her to believe that she was discriminated against? I mean, I guess what was her evidence? What evidence did she bring to the table of intentional discrimination, other than the fact that she was a black woman? I mean, you said that she's a black woman. Okay. The judge said that the company hired people from both genders and both races. Okay. You haven't told us what the company's defense was. And aside from the race and gender of the plaintiff, you haven't told us what evidence she was bringing to the table otherwise. And that just is to underscore the leaves out vital context piece of the bingo card. But this is all important information, and it's very curious to me why it's not being presented. Thank you, Chaos X, for the tactical hippo.
I would go on to learn that African American women, like other women of color, like other socially marginalized people all over the world, were facing all kinds of dilemmas and challenges as a consequence of intersectionality, intersections of race and gender, of heterosexism, transphobia, xenophobia, ableism. All of these social dynamics come together and create challenges that are sometimes quite unique.
All right, marginalized marginalization, circling that one on the card. And let's see, 1122. I want to back up slightly. Okay. See, this has always been my question about the concept of intersectionality. All right. Every element of a person conceivably falls into a category that one might say puts them on the oppression overlap here, right? Anything that falls outside the statistical norm, as I'm constantly told. So if you're anything other than male, if you're anything other than white, if you're anything other than straight, if you're anything other than able-bodied, each one of those things that takes you off from that I guess boilerplate main line is then counted as a oppression, counted as an obstacle, counted as a, etc. And then you overlap them for more. The more that you have, the worse off that you are. This was exemplified in practice, actually, during the Occupy Wall Street protests, wherein there was something called the progressive stack. And what was the progressive stack? Well, it's basically what you're looking at here on the screen, this list of various elements a person might possess, which puts them lower and lower on society's ladder, and therefore actually elevates them to more importance and prominence amongst the progressive group that was there. So if you had all these check boxes checked off, you got to speak before other people because by their estimation, you were immediately in a worse position than everybody else there. And so your voice needed to be heard versus everyone else's. That's the thinking. But here's the issue I always have with intersectional thinking. How are you supposed to solve this? Where is a solution? If all of this is a problem, what is the solution? If everything about you can be classified and categorized as an inherent vulnerability, let's say, or an inherent disadvantage, I mean, you're not going to rid yourself of these things conceivably. So what do you do? How would you change the law to accommodate your example? That's what I'm asking rhetorically our speaker now. Okay, you've identified the problem. You have your prime example. In what way would you change the law where your example wins her case? Why would she win her case? That has to be in here somewhere, right? That intersectional theory would change the law to make her win her case, because she obviously deserves to win her case because she's obviously a victim of intersectionality. Are we going to get there? I don't know. Thank you, Havoc Vladimir Vistolinov. Impacted by multiple forces, then abandoned. Most of us call that an artillery barrage. No, just me. See, I can make pointless comparisons too, lady. I just, yeah, okay. All right, so you've described the problem. You've given us an example of the problem in action. Now, bring these things together into a proposal for a solution.
But in the same way that intersectionality raised our awareness to the way that Black women live their lives.
Okay, and another thing I want to underline real quick, and this is something that isn't brought up that often. Intersectionality was specifically created to describe the oppressions of Black women originally. Now, of course, she's added on a whole bunch of other things, because with intersectionality, you can add on anything. But it was originally created to describe specifically the oppressions of Black women. Intersectionality has been, dare I say, appropriated as a concept over time to then include a plethora of other things, anything you can think of that might bring you outside of the quote-unquote standard norm of society, whatever that means. I just found that interesting.
It also exposes the tragic circumstances under which African American women die.
Just in general, or?
Police violence against Black women is very real.
And in your own example, against Black men, it's equally as real. So
the level of violence that Black women face is such that it's not surprising that some of them did not survive their encounters with police.
You bring up Black women dying, and some. Okay, I think what she said. No, word salad. At this point, I'm circling word salad. I'm just. No, sorry. No.
Black girls as young as 7, great-grandmothers as old as 95 have been killed by the police.
I believe you. Why are you still alive? How do you have a career? Why are you on a stage at a TED Talk? How is any of this possible, given your own theory?
They've been killed in their living rooms, in their bedrooms. They've been killed in their cars. They've been killed on the street. They've been killed in front of their parents, and they've been killed in front of their children.
So have men. So have white men. So have white women. None of these things are inherently good things, obviously, but what's your point?
They have been shot to death.
Yeah.
They have been stomped to death.
Okay.
They have been suffocated to death.
Uh-huh.
They have been manhandled to death.
Okay.
They have been tasered to death.
And all of these same things have happened to people of all races and genders. And again, why are you still alive? Why do you have a career? How are you standing on a TEDx stage telling us all this? If your theory is actually true for all of society and police?
They've been killed when they've called for help. They've been killed when they were alone, and they've been killed when they were with others.
So have white women. So have white men. So have Black men. So have Asian women and Asian men. And I mean, this is not me trying to dismiss people's lives here, but you're not talking about. This is not something visited upon specifically Black women only. If they are a targeted demographic, why are you still alive? How do you have a career? How have you ever had a job?
They have been killed shopping while Black, driving while Black, having a mental disability while Black,
Yeah.
having a domestic disturbance while Black.
Do you have anything else to argue or offer or propose, or is it just going to be a litany of methods and circumstances under which people have died involved in the police action? Is pulling at my heartstrings meant to somehow burgeon or bolster your argument? Intersectionality must be real because all of these people have died?
They've even been killed being homeless while Black.
And none of that supports or proves your argument.
They've been killed talking on the cell phone,
Oh, for crying out
laughing
loud.
with friends,
Uh-huh.
sitting in a car reported as stolen,
Uh-huh.
and making a U-turn in front of the White House with an infant strapped in the back seat of the car.
I'll stipulate to all of it. I will stipulate to all of it. And all of those women's lives do nothing to bolster your argument because they are not unique in having been killed by police, rightfully or wrongfully. Here, there, or otherwise around the world. I don't know what to tell you. Unless you can tell me in every single one of these cases that the only reason that they were killed, that they died, is because they were Black women. That the people involved specifically did what they did because it was a Black woman. If you could say that, if you could show me the evidence of that in every single case, you might have me on something there. But I have a feeling, I have a suspicious feeling that if you actually looked at the circumstances surrounding each one of those individual cases, you'd probably find that very few, if any, were the result specifically of the person being a Black woman. So I'm not quite sure what marching out the dead is meant to do for your presentation or for proving your point.
Why don't we know these stories?
Why don't you know the stories of a white woman killed by police? Why don't you have a white woman up there? Does her life not matter in this instance? Do I have to know the story of every person ever killed involved in police action in some way, shape, or form? And if I don't, is that a moral failing on my fault? You didn't name off all the people. Do you know all their names? What does that mean?
Why is it that their lost lives don't generate the same amount of media attention and communal outcry as the lost lives of their fallen brothers?
I don't know, because the media, the politicians, the people are all sexist and or racist, I guess. I mean, that's the conclusion you want me to come to, right? Because they are Black women, they are of lesser value to everyone, right?
It's time for a change.
Okay. What is the change that you want to have happen? You've given us your examples of injustice. You've given us your theory that would, you say, address that injustice. How do these two things meet to create the change you want?
So what can we do?
That is what I've been curious about this entire time. Setting aside, I'm sorry, but listing off people and circumstances of death is filler. It's not a presentation. It's an argument to emotion, and it doesn't do anything for me in this instance. So this is where I wanted to get to for the last 13 minutes.
In 2014, the African American Policy Forum began to demand that we say her name.
Okay, so this is the origin of that, and this has been something that's been going on and goes on today. Remember, this talk was given at least a couple of years ago now, and so you hear that with Breonna Taylor, you hear that with several other people in the news right now. Say their name, say her name, that kind of thing. So I guess that was the origin of that.
At rallies, at protests, at conferences, at meetings, anywhere and everywhere that state violence against Black bodies is being discussed.
State violence against Black bodies. Okay.
But saying her name is not enough. We have to be willing to do more. We have to be willing to bear witness.
Okay, you know what? I agree. Saying someone's name is not enough. I don't know what bear witness means, but we'll get there in a moment, I'm sure. You said that intersectionality, if the judge had had that in his playbook, let's say, then Emma would not have lost her case. How? How would the law be changed in your perfect situation wherein Emma would win her case of discrimination against the company? That is the connective tissue we're still missing here. Because saying someone's name that you believe was the victim of an injustice is one thing, certainly. Keep their story in the press and people's minds, etc. But what is the change you are looking to occur?
To bear witness to the often painful realities that we would just rather not confront. The everyday violence and humiliation that many Black women have had to face. Black women across color, age, gender expression, sexuality, and ability.
So it is just about Black women. It's not about any other kind of woman. It's not about anybody else, specifically Black women. So white women, Asian women, Latino women, sorry, the pepper jack's getting to me. None of these people matter, just Black women. This is the only demographic that you are focused on. Tell me again about racial discrimination.
So we have the opportunity right now, bearing in mind that some of the images that I'm about to share with you may be triggering for some.
So more appeals to emotion. Okay. And guys, I don't know what she's about to show. If she's about to show like explicit images of violence or something, I might have to just stop this here because I don't want to risk YouTube deciding that this video is inappropriate or something. So we'll see what happens in the next few seconds.
To collectively bear witness to some of this violence, we're going to hear the voice of the phenomenal Abby Dobson.
Oh, okay. So this is the introduction to the musical number I mentioned. So this might be effectively the end of the presentation. We got exactly 1 minute left before we get to where I cut it off for the musical number. So we'll play it out.
And as we sit with these women, some who've experienced violence and some who have not survived them, we have an opportunity to reverse what happened at the beginning of this talk, when we could not stand for these women because we did not know their names.
Is simply knowing their name enough, though? Shouldn't you also know the circumstances surrounding what happened to them? Because I have to take it on faith if I'm to understand what's about to happen, that I've cut off, obviously, that you simply telling me that someone died involved in police action died unjustly, or that their circumstances were an intentional assassination or something by state power. If you're not going to give us any more information, I can't make an objective assessment of what you're talking about. And given the fact that nothing in this talk actually led us to an argument for change, I'm not quite sure what the point of intersectionality is if the point was to change things so that Emma did not lose her case.
So at the end of this clip, there's going to be a roll call.
Uh-huh.
Several Black women's names will come up.
Uh-huh.
I'd like those of you who are able to join us in saying these names as loud as you can, randomly, disorderly. Let's create a cacophony of sound to represent our intention, to hold these women up, to sit with them, to bear witness to them, to bring them into the light.
Okay, a cacophony of sound. That's actually not a bad way of describing what the bulk of this presentation was. As the old quote goes, sound and fury signifying nothing. Okay, well, I mean, I have a better understanding of what the core definition of intersectionality is. It's not that far off from things I'd been told in the past, but like I said before, I don't want to make assumptions about what I've been told by secondhand people and things like that. I'd rather hear it from the source. And we did. And it didn't really convince me of anything because it didn't seem like she had anything to try to convince me of. So let's go to the bingo card. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. Again, she came up with this in the late 80s. Excuse me, or early 90s, so it's not a new buzzword or buzz phrase. Contradicts own point argument. You know what? I'd say that her saying that Black women are the only demographic that matters is a little bit contradictory to the notion that racial discrimination is bad, okay? So I'm circling that one. White supremacy, she never said the phrase, and honestly, she didn't dwell too much on that aspect, so I can't circle that one. Takes credit for something done experienced by others in their demographic. No, not that I recall. Wage gap, she never talked about economics so much. She talked about the job, obviously, and that Emma was a working woman, but we never got into pay or anything like that. Childhood or family anecdote. She never talked about herself too much. Except in her research and those kinds of things, but no childhood family anecdote. Self-vilification or wretchedness, she never did that, no. Equity, I don't think she ever said equity or equitable. I could be mistaken if you guys know otherwise. Weightless example. I'm circling that one for all of the unspecified dead people. And also the fact that she started out with an equal number of men who were killed by police as women, yet saying that somehow Black women were inordinately targeted. Now, obviously, she came up with a long list of women after the fact, but I have a feeling that there is an equitable long list of men of various skin colors that you could put in front of that. So I'm circling weightless example. Toxic, she never said the word. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I'm circling that one too, because she never showed us how anything about Emma's case had to do with discrimination. Like, because she's Black and a woman, therefore she was discriminated against, even though there was evidence the company was not discriminating on the basis of race or sex. And again, I am iffy on the notion that they were then discriminatory on just hiring Black men for labor and just hiring white women for secretarial stuff. But either way, a lot of this didn't hold a lot of water for me. Microaggressions, unconscious bias. I mean, I guess you could say it was implied in some of what was being said about, Black women's as their own category were being discriminated against, but she never went that far. So I'm having a hard time saying I'm going to circle that one. Anecdote that probably never happened. I'm going to leave that one blank because the only anecdote she really gave us was the Emma Degraffenreid story. And enough about it is true that, and given the time frame in which it occurred, I'm not set on necessarily saying that some or all of that didn't actually happen. The lack of context from what the company's argument was and what Emma's case is its own square. Privilege, she never said the word, surprisingly enough. I was kind of surprised by that. Benevolent condescension. Yes, that anybody with one or more of those elements is somehow a victim. inherently and perpetually a victim. She just knows it. She doesn't need to know the circumstances of their life, their personality, their own sense of self. No, she knows ahead of time, looking at somebody, that they are oppressed, that they are disadvantaged. Systemic institutional. Again, I don't believe she ever used the phrases, so I'm kind of surprised by that. I mean, you could extrapolate and say, oh, well, the legal system was not geared. Well, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think the whole the law was not made to protect Emma? Do you think that could be extended to include a systemic institutional reference? James Von Maxwell, that would be systemic. Megan Ring says, yep. You know what? Yeah, okay. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. Plays victim. I don't know that she played the victim. She never brought up herself all that much. She talked about the demographic, and aside from her research and the chance meeting with Emma Degraffenreid, which she never went into detail on what the meeting was, if there was one. I don't know. I mean, I guess she was placing herself obviously in that category, and so you could presume, therefore, that she was a victim just based on what she is. Well, you know what? That actually goes to the core of her whole theory. So, yeah, I'm going to circle plays victim. Effectively, what she was saying is that she should be seen as inherently a victim because of what she is. Okay. Patriarchy. She never brought that up. Kind of surprised. And mind reading assumes motives. Well, she assumed the motive of the company in the case, and she assumed the motives of the judge. And at least by extension, she assumed the lack of interest or care or whatever in the audience for those people that did not recognize certain names. So guys, let me bring up the bingo card as I have it so that you guys can see that and we can discuss the final outcome here before we wrap up for the afternoon. So there's what I have so far. If you have an argument for something else, we're all over the place, but we didn't quite get a bingo. And if only she'd given a far more clear anecdote that probably never happened, we might have hit a bingo here. If she had made herself the villain or wretchedness in some way, we'd have a bingo. If she brought up patriarchy, which she didn't, even though she talked about feminism, we'd have a bingo. So just those key elements are absent. Now, as always, I'll take arguments otherwise if you have them. Yeah, so going over to the chat, Assassin Gray, Scribelite, Jessica Doty Whitaker, Cannon Hinart, Adam Hayner, Portland Truck Driver, Beaten to Death, say their names. Well, I mean, sure. Tragedies all around. In this instance, this talk was years ago before any of that happened. So I get your point, but you know, it's kind of irrelevant to this. Foxy Veritas, Scribelite, after the bingo card, could you check out the graph I tagged you and it relates to this in a way? I will do that. James Von Maxwell, but Scribelite, she's black, so obviously she's a victim. Yeah, so I circled plays victim. So we got that one. Let's see. Zach Osborne, I thought you circled anecdote. Okay, so let me explain the anecdote thing one more time. My original circling of the anecdote was the element of her story that the company hired black men and white women exclusively, and only black men were in labor and only white women were in secretarial. And at the time that she said the comment or said the story, it sounded bizarre to me that that would actually be true, that statistically speaking, that would be true. But then Lexi brought up the years in which this case actually took place, 1975 to 1976 or something like that, right? And so given the era and culture at the time, it didn't sound as implausible. So that being the case, I took back the anecdote that probably never happened. Because given the circumstances, I couldn't say with any sort of even cynical certainty that it was necessarily untrue. It still sounds a bit off, but I'm not as confident to say that it never happened, so to speak. Let's see. Faithless, describe like all of the random killed while black anecdotes, presuming it was just because they were black. That leaves out vital context. I can't say an anecdote that probably never happened without an actual anecdote. So, yeah, I'm going to be a bit strict on that one. And if I'm going to circle anecdote that probably never happened here, it's going to be a steep hill to climb on this one, because she only ever brought up one specific anecdote, aside from just sort of showing pictures and saying that people were the victims of unjustly police action. So yeah, I would need more anecdotes, and she didn't give any but that one. Let's see, functional, but then she said she never got the job. Someone researched it and said she was hired, but she was let go on the last hired, first fired case. So I call if there's that many errors anecdote that didn't. Okay, if somebody in very short order here can, because her telling of the story was that Emma Degraffenreid was denied employment. And you know what? Just to be fair, I don't know if that means a job at the company that she didn't already possess, or a promotion within the company that she was already working for. I'll take either one as her saying of it being true. But if you give me something that says otherwise, I'll entertain it. But again, it's going to be a steep hill at this point. Lexi Mad, she didn't work there, and she never even applied based on an assumption she wouldn't get hired. What? Is that accurate? Wait, so she just... Okay. And not that I don't believe Lexi, but I'm doing this on the fly here. I don't have the ability to look this up. If somebody can verify that that's the actual circumstances, that she didn't already have a job there, that she didn't even apply there, but she brought a case against the company on the belief that they wouldn't hire her. Lexi Mad says, yep, it's in the decision. Okay, again, Lexi, not that I don't believe you. If somebody else can just second that, then I will circle anecdote that probably never happened, because that changes the entire landscape of her argument there for me. Let's see. Functional says, and yes, Scribe, I believe in the sanctity of the card, but there's far too many errors in the retelling of the anecdote to reported evidence. Okay, like I say, if somebody can second what Lexi has just said, that it wasn't a job that she applied for and never got, and it wasn't a job that she was looking for internally with the company, that she never actually applied for a job, just filed a lawsuit on the basis of a belief that she wouldn't be hired, then I'll circle that. Brad Young, Scribe is way too fair. It's sickening. Well, here's the thing. What is the purpose of my channel? Ultimately, what is the purpose of my channel? The one thing I hope that my channel does, if nothing else, aside from entertaining myself, obviously, it encourages people to think critically about stuff. Not necessarily agree with me, not necessarily, believe everything I say or come to the same conclusions. Just listen to what is being said and think critically about it. And this is one of those things. This is an example of that. It's like, okay, she said a thing. Does it apply in this case? The bingo card is an extension of critical thinking and, attentiveness to a certain extent. I mean, some things are obvious, like if somebody says toxic or somebody gives a childhood or family anecdote. But being able to say that they've left out vital context, that an example is weightless, that the anecdote probably never happened based on the information. That's all part of the critical thinking element of what I hope my channel encourages in people. So yeah, I'm going to hold it to it because that's part of this. Brad Young, just playing, dude. I'm glad you were this way. No, I'm not, and I'm not getting defensive per se. I'm just over-explaining myself as I have a tendency to do in life. Let's see. Okay, faithless critical thinking is anathema to the modern left and even modern education. Critical thinking is anathema to any ideologue. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle we're talking about. It's not critical thinking is not a political position, as far as I'm concerned, or an inherently ideological position. Critical thinking conceivably actually works against pure ideology. So, Foxy Veritas, don't forget me. I'm okay. I won't forget you. Okay, did you tag me in something real quick? Let's see. A graph. Okay, African-American homicides versus police shootings. Oh, sure. Yeah. No, the statistics on looking at what actually the numbers are, I didn't want to bring up because if she didn't bring it up, sorry, get that in there too. I try only to focus on what the speaker brings up in their case, and she didn't bring up the stats, and it didn't really feel right to bring up the stats because she started off by telling us, here's a number of black men who've been killed by police. Here's an equal number of black women killed by police. Okay, so you're showing an equilibrium, a very grim and sad equilibrium, but let's see. Okay. So James Von Maxwell, it sounds like the lawsuit was dismissed because the plaintiffs wanted to create a new super remedy combining racial and sex discrimination, creating black women as a special class. No, I mean, I understood that from the speaker's own argument. My question is, in regards to the lawsuit specifically, did she bring a suit against the company not for having been denied employment, but simply on the belief that the company was racist without actually having gone through a hiring process? And Satsu 2 cents is in the chat. Hi, Satsu. So if someone can verify and corroborate what Lexi said about the case, I will circle anecdote that probably never happened, because the very basis upon which she was making this anecdote relevant to her argument falls apart real quick there, and we'll have a bingo. So I'm putting the onus on you guys to prove to me that this show deserves a bingo. But I won't go any farther than at the bottom of the hour, because I want to keep this to at least 90 minutes if I can. But I'll take comments and questions in the meantime. Foxy says, Scribelight, thank you, Huno, and thank you for the recommendation on Matt Orchard. Oh yeah, side note, if you like true crime analysis and crime documentaries, look up Matt Orchard on YouTube, especially if you like Jim Can't Swim documentaries, because I mean, it apparently, and actually, I really want to see if I can get him on a Familiar with the Matter. It seems as though he was inspired by Jim Can't Swim, both in format and even in word choice in a lot of cases. So I was very impressed by that. Let's see. Lexi says, I posted the link, but I'm not a mod, so it's not clickable. Oh, okay. Can you tweet it? Oh, Anna Lynn, sorry. Anna Lynn, Scribely, she never applied, went over this case in ethics class. Oh, well then. Having corroboration, having a seconded verification. Bingo! All right, guys, we have hit a bingo. It was hard earned, but worth it. So now in the future, if someone brings up the concept of intersectionality, you have a better working knowledge of what that is supposed to mean. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you believe it or not, you'll at least know. And so if you do disagree with it, it'll be an informed disagreement. Thank you guys so much for all your help on this one. Do appreciate it. If you would like to hear more from me, or Satsu 2 cents, or the Ranting Monkey, you can find all three of us tonight on Ranting Monkey's channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, where we will talk about the news of the day, news stories that you submit to us via Twitter using the hashtag MSSNews, on the off chance any newcomers are listening, because I know I have a few more today. And we will talk about what we've been up to on the internet, and then we'll take your questions and comments. Everyone, thank you so much for your attendance today. Thank you so much for your participation. Without it, we wouldn't even have the bingo that we do. I really appreciate it. Everyone who donated today, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate that as well. It'll all go towards horrible things I'll put in my body, like goldfish and Dr. Pepper and Jack Daniels, to help insulate my brain from the next TEDx. Everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your Wednesday. I hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.